Thanks so much. Hey, everybody. Good morning. My name is Inglezakis Owens, and I'm going to be speaking about describing it all. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about me. Then we're going to talk about describing organizational life in order to stand up knowledge management in highly differentiated organizations using knowledge graphs for business and IT. Okay. Is this going? Yes, this is going. Okay. A little bit about me. I've had too much caffeine and I'm a supply chain person. For the last 10 years, I've been doing data information architecture. More recently, I've been doing enterprise architecture and business relationship management. You're going to hear a lot about that today. My background's in epistemology, and this month I am celebrating my 10-year emancipation from academia. So I am really happy. I got out. I made it. Okay. So here's the kind of businesses I had in mind when I put this talk together. They are highly localized and they are global. This means that either because of geolocation, customer base, or industry, there's this broad organization that has to have different kinds of operations and maintain a plurality of operations at any given time. The local processes lead to highly localized IT solutions. And here's why we end up, oh God, needing knowledge management. This has just come back. This is no longer dead. When we have old storied organizations, what happens is people encode how they think into their systems. Times change, people learn the organization from the system. And thank you, Margaret. And over time, those different parts of the org, our different markets, start thinking differently about the same thing. So that not only are they doing different things, they don't even have the same language to describe what they're doing. Then if I, as a huge global business spending tons of money, decide that I want to do something like process rationalization or a global software deployment, I can't. This is what IT looks like when we're in one of these organizations. I grabbed this off LinkedIn. I did not make it. We have tons of different systems. We have tons of different integrations. We have out-of-date documentation, and we have spaghetti. Your spaghetti may be schematic spaghetti. It may be system spaghetti. It may be data spaghetti, but it's spaghetti. Typically, when organizations like this want to undertake knowledge management, they are trying to solve one of two problems. They either want to capitalize on economies of scale or figure out which kinds of things they can do in the same way while still localizing or specializing their way to differentiation. That's one thing. Or they have just practiced radical acceptance about how they make their money and they want to reduce costs associated with running locally. So how do we get more efficient within our global constraints when standardizing would really hurt our differentiation? Here's how I approached this problem when I last encountered it. I took path 2. I focused on cost reduction while running locally. I would have taken a different approach if I had encountered one of two things, either business-driven process change desire that didn't exist, supportability issues in the system also didn't exist, or a desire for an omni-channel experience also didn't exist. Exists for me now, so I've got a whole new can of worms. To reduce cost while remaining relevant in markets, here are the things we were thinking about. We found that during our IT projects, when we wanted to introduce new technology or integrate existing technology in new ways, 60% of project cost was discovery, just documenting the as-built architecture, because we didn't have any up-to-date documentation. The second largest cost that accounted for about 40% was integration cost. Once we have a target, now we know what we have a target, how do we actually put all these things together? And here's how I drove cost savings. High level, we'll have some more detail in a second. Because I was the enterprise marketer, I could make a rule saying, anytime you want to introduce new software into this division, or you want to integrate anything, what you are going to do is make a formal encoding of your integration or your new system, and you are going to put it somewhere where you can refer to it later. When you think that, or not you think, the fact was that we had an average 20 to 75% overlap in our projects. So we're able to reuse those integrations. We're able to reuse those new software specs. We were able to like bring a $15 million program down to between 11 and a quarter. And this was like the moonshot we didn't quite get to, 3.75 million. So it was serious cost savings just by doing good documentation. The solution we used for this, I am not going to go into because my friends at Medifacts and AWS are here who helped me do it, and you can go ask them how we did this. We are going to talk about lessons learned. My key lessons over the past 10 years, standing up knowledge management, often using knowledge graphs. I learned most of them by failing. So I want you to learn from my mistakes. You heard a similar talk yesterday from from Tara. And if Tara is the general talking about strategy, I'm the NCO talking about logistics. So you can use our talks together to get where you want to go. There's also a narrative version of what I'm going to talk about that you can check out at APQC. And if you don't have access to that, you can connect with me and I will send it to you. Okay. So first, you're not dealing with a technology problem. This is a documentation problem. Getting humans or machines to document things at the right time in the right way. What you need to do here is what our last presenter from Siemens talked about doing. Use the kind of documentation method that people like. Capitalize on the colloquial, whether that's spreadsheets, email confirmations, handoff meetings, governance meetings, review meetings, or Swagger Hub commits. Just understand that end-to-end process and frame your documentation activities in those terms to those audiences. That way you sidestep any issue of you're doing it wrong, your process sucks. Instead, you're saying this is just a technology adjustment to make it easier for you. So if people have been using the same spreadsheet for 15 years to document how systems relate to one another, it's no longer getting emailed to Mara, it's now getting uploaded to an S3 bucket. If you are setting up services that register changes to specific Git repos and you want to remap when there's like a 98% confidence match for all key objects and scope, and then you want humans to review the other 2%, human devs, you're no longer configuring stuff, you are now reviewing. This helps people let go of anxiety and jealousy that their jobs are going away or that they don't matter. That doesn't always work though. And in case it doesn't, next thing you have to do is find strong and active executive leadership. This is something I totally failed to do when I was earlier in my career. And it was, this lesson is close to my heart. So the job of your sponsor is to help move the work through competing priorities, to help explain the value of the work to other executives with competing priorities, and to help those recalcitrant SMEs get with the program. This person needs to be usually like vice president in office. This needs to be somebody with power. In order for your executive sponsor to help you, they need to understand what you're doing and why. That means you need to prioritize being comprehensible to them over being precise and comprehensive. I'm not talking about dumbing it down here. I'm talking about being meaningful to your audience, where their interests override your interests. Speaking of, you need to tie your work to the P&L, the P&L, the profit and loss sheet. Whether we like it or not, finance usually controls the top levels of our businesses. Learn to speak finance, get your funding. Here's a little worksheet that you guys can access later. If you are like me and the only kind of quantification you know how to do is existential. When I first did this successfully, I was so Distressed by the prospect of failure, I made bold to call up my division's finance VP and say, can you help me? I have a project that I know is really important for the org, but I don't know how to frame it. Can I buy you a coffee? And she said yes. She helped me make a beautiful presentation. I was able to pitch, I was able to get funding. And then when budget reconciliation came around, guess who my champion was? The VP of finance of my division, because she felt like it was hers too. Okay, we started way up at the org, now we're going to go way down. Your implementation team, they need to be accountable and able. They need to be able to work. So most of our engineers and our devs don't know how to work with semantic web. They don't know how to work with graph at all. People may find it easier if they understand object-oriented programming, linguistics, poetry, logic, or discrete math. Your job is to teach them. It's not to sit back and say, go teach yourself. Your job is to go proactively figure out what's important to them, what they know, and then teach them. They also need to be able to work. And when we introduce new technology to our orgs or old technology in new ways, we sometimes threaten people. Your job is to move those hurt feelings out of the way or deploy the executive sponsor to do that. If your team is fighting with the infrastructure team 24/7, or fighting with the security team, they're not doing any work. They're not delivering value for you. You go do that for them. You take care of them. This is so important, it gets its own slide. Your team's contributions need to be measured by the impact they drive, not by volume. If your team ships a lot of code but doesn't support business goals, even at 10 steps remove, they're making an impact to the L side of the P&L. You're not getting any more funding because now you're a cost. You're not a profit. So connect your milestones to your business problems. I gave you some examples to peruse at your leisure. And I just want to say, because we're in the United States, this is a really hard thing to do. We use the word productive to mean something that is moral and a moral judgment on a human being. So this is profoundly hard. If you are working in this country or an Americanized culture, take great care here. This is a part that everybody hates. And then there's another part that people also hate. You have to quantify it right. So you have to make sure you're quantifying your objects right on an ontological level and on an underlying resource level, especially when the resource might not be directly controlled by the ontology, or it might involve multiple or competing source systems. That's spaghetti. Okay, if you don't do this, you might have the world's most lovely ontology, but it doesn't work. And there are usually two ways that this happens. First, if there's no programmatic way to tell like a product from a SKU, as those things are constituted in the underlying data store, your users can't meaningfully interact with those resources that the ontology should be organizing. Ask me offline how I know. Second, many of our resources change state. If we don't understand the life cycle of the phenomenon that the resource represents, like an aircraft boarding process that is now getting more and more segmented because we want you to buy the nicer credit card. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, if we don't understand that and we don't have a good representation, let's say we decide that we're going to hack what should be an array into OWL as a set of classes linked by functional properties. You don't have this, you can't make informed decisions about when resources need to obtain novel or additional classifications or do the kinds of whole triple markup showing change over time that our friends at AWS and Oracle talked about yesterday. Understanding this change over time also helps you make good decisions about what kind of resource identification scheme you might need. Do I need a UID, hash value, a term and a controlled vocab, so on and so forth. Okay. And the other part everybody hates. Your most powerful, least prepared ally is your legal team. Legal team is used to dealing with data like contracts and like people and like terms of employment. They're not used to dealing. That's stuff that used to be in a paper file system. These are lawyers. You're not used to dealing with the file system. File system is the ontology. So you need to sit with your legal team and make sure that your service agreements with your customers and your vendors, however much you may love them, address not only the data, the erstwhile files, but the file system itself. And I think I have some list of things that I often ask my legal teams to address. Once they start thinking critically about this, remember that the law is a system of deduction. These people are going to be on your side once you bring them there. It's just like your devs. Teach them, they'll come. If you put in the time, they will come, they will help you, and they will thank you. They will say, thank you for bringing this to my attention. Okay, that's it for lessons learned. Next to best practices. These are not technical. All of you are better technologists than I am, and I am not going to presume to tell you what to do, but they are tested. And my hope here is that you can either bring them back to your orgs or pass them on to a friend. So, first thing, which we heard yesterday, define the use case before defining the ontology. If you don't know why you're describing phenomena using an ontology, you risk missing content or structural requirements, and that's going to impact your usability. Okay. Here are some examples that you can use later. Next, publish ontology design standards and stick to them. Your ontologists and your consumers downstream, whether these are human or whether these are machines, need design constraints in order to do work, including useful quantification, in a timely manner and in a consistent and testable way. Here are some of the things I typically think about when I am writing design standards for people or for machines. Okay. Here's another really important thing that I don't think we do enough of. Ontologies need quality assurance. They're only as useful as they are accurate, and in a changing world, our ontologies must change to be useful. The kinds of changes we need to manage are phenomenological, so that's understanding the life cycle of the thing that we represented, whether that's like a production line and maintenance cycle, or the design and cross-agency approval process for publishing airfares. And our ontologies, when deployed, comprise hard dependencies for software like databases, reasoners, non-symbolic AI, integration software. So they really do need SDLC management. They greatly benefit from test-driven development using the design standards we talked about, or the as bases for your test metrics. And they also merit attention to things like content type when exposing via an API. Okay, so you have your quality standards. You also have to operationalize your quality standards, engage them at the right time. Usually, when deciding what kinds of controls to impose, I think about the temperament of my organization. I do big governance examples in a second. When I'm in an industry that is risk averse, highly regulated, and legacy, so like a conservative organization. I do less governance or small governance, and here are some examples for you to read through. When I'm in an organization where move fast and break things is totally okay. In the interest of time, I will let you take these home. Next, and this is mostly a people thing, but give ontologies good UX. It's the face of your ontology, and it's, excuse me, imperative to get it right for usability. So ask, who or what is using it? What do they want to accomplish? What tasks? Also, why? What is the business purpose for the tasks? A beautifully rendered and relevant strategy that addresses those three things is one, necessary scaffolding for knowledge management. You can't do it without it. It's also a perfect advertising vehicle for you or your executive sponsor to take into value conversations, because you're not just saying, I can do, you're showing, here it is, I did it, you can find it. Speaking, here are some quick examples where I connect UX to the PNL, and you can peruse those at your leisure, in case you're like me and you have trouble writing these statements. In order for the UX to be good, you have to do something uncomfortable. You have to get feedback. And I don't mean like the little test team. I mean, you can go find real users, put them in real situations where they have minimal support, and ask them to complete tasks that are relevant to their jobs. This can be uncomfortable. it can also be really powerful. In my group, in my groups, I typically get my business users and I get a higher level person or two whom I want to be a sponsor. This way, I get feedback about product direction, and my engineering team is confident that either they are doing something useful or they have real information from real people who will talk to them about what is not working and they can change course immediately. Okay. Last but not least, thinking critically about how and when to do AI, being realistic. Your hardest sell here is going to be your sponsors, and it's going to depend on how your relative pragmatism or hype tolerance aligns with your sponsors, and how your relative pragmatism and hype tolerance aligns with both the state of the tech available at your organization. I'm not talking about the state of the art. I'm talking about what your legal team is saying you can and can't use without getting the boot. And then your more immediate group's willingness to deploy those technologies or unwillingness. My next slides are going to unpack a few considerations that I have top of mind for both symbolic and non-symbolic AI, not exhaustive, but just an example of what I think about. If I am thinking about deploying reasoning, I'm making sure the ontology is logically consistent. This can be really hard if we're using human ontologists or trained taxonomists. So again, go and teach them. Also, make sure that the ontology gives inferences that you expect. This is why it is so critical to have strong quality and reliability, and why both test-driven development and UX testing are so profoundly important, because that's when you really find out whether or not things work. Finally, if you want to do non-symbolic AI and you want the LLM, for example, to help you write the ontology or do any other creative work, formalize and ruthlessly enforce your design standards. If you want your LLM to be the subject matter expert, as someone in the audience told me last night he does, with something having to do with documents, they need to know what the design standards are. You also have to get ready to shift your engineering labor away from creativity and into quality and reliability. That may mean new people, because that's a specialized skill set. And then you also have to get your legal team ready for a conversation with your LLM vendor about one, specialty training, unless you're in a domain that's really, really well represented by LLMs that use public domain. And then, of course, stabilizing your LLM so you don't have to re-author your prompts every time the vendor makes a release, because that's exhausting. You also should ask yourself, or I would advise you to ask yourself, if your domain is suited to LLM for automated ontology generation. If you need to purpose build the LLM, something a domain like botany is much easier to get out of a public domain LLM than like a specialized manufacturing process. And then also back to the legal team, do regulatory and compliance matters make unreliably explainable AI unusable? Like for me right now, working in transportation where an error could mean that people die, it's not acceptable. So something like a graph neural network embedding of an ontology, like one of our presenters described on Tuesday, would, for me right now, be a better application of non-symbolic AI. Okay, so if you remember nothing else from this today, I hope you remember the importance of executive sponsorship, everything back to the P&L, public thought, and usability. Thank you, everybody. Okay.
Well, I think you alluded to a scenario that I run into when I try and partly fail to be an enterprise architect.
Yes.
Thank you for acknowledging that, Shannon. For developers, well, let's say development managers who've risen up in a technical background,
Yes.
they will say, and developers will agree, the code is self-documenting. Why are you trying to get documentation? Is all available, just read it.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, yeah, we need an abstraction and so forth. And I know executive sponsorship can override that if they want to, but what do you say to the developers about that premise?
I say, who's the user who needs the documentation? And then when they tell me, I go hand the user the code and I say, what's that say? That's what I do. And I do it in front of the developer and then they learn. which is not very nice, but it's effective. I have two small children and I've been a dog handler for a long time. So that's my style. You're welcome. I'm happy to unpack further in a less like adversarial way. Any other questions or observations? Okay, everybody, let's eat.